This will be a little bit different from my usual stuff. In Final Fantasy XIV, there are many types of endgame content. There is the tough as nails savage raids for those who want a challenge. There is the housing for those looking to explore their creative sides. There is crafting and gathering for those that seek to dominate the market board. There is stuff to do in Limsa. But for me, my endgame is Glamour. There are so many cool armor sets in FF14. Managing my Glamour dresser has been a death of 1,000 cuts. I was elated when it got increased. I was inspired by some videos on how some players use Glamour to tell the story of their Warrior of Light. They use Glamour to help immerse themselves in the world of Eorzea. Their insights resonated with me. As with any MMORPG, you will start out with mismatched armor and eventually get enough resources to style out your Warrior of Light the way you want to. It is especially important in Final Fantasy XIV because your character appears in so many cutscenes, and while there is great comedy to enter a very serious cutscenes while wearing lingerie or a mascot costume, that is not the story I want to tell. So from this point on, this video will contain discussions on major story moments in Final Fantasy XIV up to the Endwalker's expansion. If you don't want any spoilers, then head out now. This is your only warning. With that, let's forge ahead. For the longest time, this is what my Warrior of Light was wearing. I had to grind some all to complete this look, and while it is frustrating to get the pieces of every other job than mine, I eventually got it done and I was proud of that. You can't beat the classic barbarian look with a bit of a plains roamer flair to it. The Shiva axe is also one of the axe glamours that look like an actual weapon. Unfortunately, Square Enix can't seem to design good axes. Many of them are what I would call abstract art on a stick. The Shiva axe is one exception, and the fact that it is made out of ice helps drives the fantasy in Final Fantasy. However, during the events of Shadowbringers, I came to realize that my character wasn't just an adventurer anymore. He was no longer a tourist taking in the sights and fighting the occasional primal. He had become a symbol of hope for the people. He had become the figure that the people rally behind. His presence on the battlefield would boost the morale of the army. He had become the proverbial cavalry. With all that your Warrior of Light has achieved, this should have been obvious, right? But in all of the wars and revolutions that your Warrior of Light has participated in, he was never the figurehead. He was just the guy that goes in and smashes things. When people looked to leadership, they didn't look to your Warrior of Light. That changed in Shadowbringers. You were the Warrior of Darkness, the hope of the people in Norvrot. The Crystal Exarch did not participate in combat as much as the other leaders. You were the one that led the charge. You were the one that the soldiers rallied behind. And as much as I love being the big, strong, no-brain character, I couldn't just be that anymore. To reflect this, I wanted something official looking and almost regal. I needed glam that would tell people that I mean business, but practical enough that it could be used in actual combat. So I settled for this. I like orange. This was another long grind in Gimlet Dark. Luckily, it was part of the Iterant Moogle event, so getting a group was relatively easy. Plus tank privileges. Add a few pieces from Bosja and I was ready for Endwalker. For a while, I was happy with my choice. My Warrior of Light looked really good in cutscenes. But then, disaster struck. After you finish the first couple of quests in Charlean, you're given a piece of armor as a quest reward. And the armor looks like this. That's right, it's a dyeable version of the Gimlet Dark armor set. The centerpiece of my current look. Now granted, there are some notable differences. The orange in the dungeon armor is much more vibrant, even if you dye the armor orange. The gold filigree also pops out more, so while it would look the same from afar, mine would look so much better up close. But here's the issue. Fashion is a metagame. You only look as good in contrast to everyone around you. If everyone around you is wearing the same thing, you don't have a look, you have a uniform. And while there are instances when everyone wearing it can look cool, for the most part, it makes you look conventional. Either that or they are 2B's thigh highs. And it only took seeing one other tank wearing this free armor unglamoured for me to decide that I needed some new threads. Upon watching a couple of cutscenes with the Scions, I came to a realization. Most of the outfits of the Scions are predominantly white, black, blue, red, or gold. While my warrior had a strong orange accents to differentiate him, it still looked way too similar to what the others were wearing. I had to be the pop of color of this crew. So I came up with this. Not 100% happy with this, but I have never tried these colors before and it was not bad. It did achieve the objective of looking distinct from the other scions. However, our adventures would eventually take us to the snowy lands of Garlemald, and you know I had to design a winter outfit for my guy. While Tataru does give you a nice coat, I wasn't going to settle for that, especially since the rest of the scions was getting their own cold weather getup. Part of the reason why I enjoy Glamour so much is because it makes me feel like a kid who is designing his own doll or action figure, which in a way I guess I am. This was going to be the winter action version of my Warrior of Light. Envisioning how your character's style translates in different situations helps to refine their aesthetics and expands their visual language. So I came up with this. Considering this is a combination of A Realm Reborn and Raid armor, I really like this set. It creates the illusion of wearing a heavy robe underneath some armor. It really blends well to the snowy, desolate landscapes of Garlemald. In cutscenes, he looks like he's been living in these mountains his whole life. And when Xenos takes your body out for a ride, well, seeing my well-dressed protector become a Manchurian candidate was delicious irony. But we weren't going to stay in Garlemald forever. At this point I was getting frustrated, so I thought maybe I can just stick to the warrior artifact armor set for the rest of the expansion. I mean, it looks cool on paper. Never mind. But as I was struggling with my glamour, my daily roulette brought me to the royal city of Rabanastre, where this armor piece dropped for me. There are so many armor pieces I want from the Ivalice raids, but farming them does prove a challenge. This chest armor was at the top of the list and I was overjoyed when it finally dropped for me. The pattern on the chest was simple, but the many colors could symbolize badges of office. Each color could represent a different accomplishment. The golden armored shoulder pads hide the functionality of the armor underneath ornamentation. And it has a cool cape too. This definitely has the bearing of a decorated warrior ready for combat. A Kingsguard, someone who needs to look presentable in court, but his axe would be in your skull the second you tried something funny. While I had most of the pieces of this armor set, I didn't want to look so one-note, and I landed on my current look. While it was a little disjointed, I seemed to come back to this ensemble no matter how many times I remade it. Given my style, I shouldn't like this. The main chest armor already has so many accent colors and this just adds more. The dominant white was not really meshing with all the other pieces, so why couldn't I move on from this ensemble? I took a step back and looked at the ensemble as a whole. He definitely looked like a Final Fantasy character. He had tons of little details that looked great on a moving model, but would probably give a cosplayer a headache. He evoked the image of a white knight, but had enough accents like elbow armor, fingerless gloves, and armored boots that would show that his armor, despite looking ceremonial, is still armor. He looks like someone that is ready to get into a fight, but approachable enough that if you ask him for directions, he would instead take you to where you need to go to make sure you didn't get lost. Over time, this look grew on me. I had always been conservative with my color choices before. Perhaps it's time I branched out. Then I noticed something neat. All of the scions were represented with this armor. You have the blues from Alphino and Estinian, the red from Alice and Grahatia, the black from Ishtola, the white from Thancred, and the gold from Urianger. As for my guy, he was represented by the oranges and browns. I saw this as my Warrior of Light taking pride in being a scion. The journey so far would have been far more difficult without them, but deep down he still remembers his roots. Throughout all of his battles across caves and continents, time and space, infinity and beyond, amidst everything that has happened, one thing has remained true. He was an adventurer. He takes all of his new world seriously, but that sense of wanderlust, that desire to explore and discover, that has never left him. Perhaps I didn't have to be the pop of color. Perhaps we didn't have to look like the Power Rangers. This armor told my Warrior of Light's personality and his story. In some ways, he looks like a walking flag, and I am okay with that. His big imposing armor would make him stand out and draw attention. He was the rallying flag that screams across the battlefield. I have arrived. Stand behind me. Everything will be okay. So for now, I'm happy with this look. Maybe that'll change in the future when new armor comes in. But for now, this is my Warrior of Light, ready to help out and go on another adventure. Thanks for watching. Truly, you just put up with me rambling about my glamour process for a couple of minutes. Thanks for indulging me. But I think storytelling in video games comes in many forms. I wanted to explore one of the ways it is done in MMORPGs. While the promise of a grand sweeping narrative and of adventure in distant worlds is the hook of many MMORPGs, I think the real story is in the little moments that happen during the adventure. Whether it's a memorable kill in PvP, discovering something cool in the world, a story beat resonating with you, or even just getting that armor piece you have been grinding hours for, these are the moments that live in the hearts of players and really make their adventure their own. So before you head out, Tell me about your fondest MMO memory. Leave it in the comments below. Until our paths cross again, see you, traveler.